prairies to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And together, let's all recite our Rotary four-way test. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right, that having been said, thank you. And Joe Bauman, if you would lead us in an inspiration.
Thank you, President John. With all that's going on in the world and Mother's Day just having come and gone and people not able to connect in the ways that they probably would want to with loved ones, it's time that many of us have probably felt a little melancholy. So I dug up one of my favorite pieces from one of my favorite authors, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I thought I would share with you his version of what he calls success. Success is to laugh often and much, to win respect of intelligent people and the affection of children, to earn the appreciation of honest critics and endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to leave the world a little better, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to know even one life has breathed easier because you have lived. This is to have succeeded. There you go.
Thank you, Joe. That's very uplifting in these difficult times, and we appreciate that. Well, we have some special guests today, of course. Kevin Dietz. Hello, Kevin, and
hello,
welcome again.
How are you?
We're very privileged to have you join us, and we'll hear from you very shortly. Carol Marsh, you're here, Carol, and I don't know if you had an opportunity to say hello to everyone, but thank you for participating.
I'm happy to be here, and I tried to introduce Bill Collin, who's also from the Frankfurt Club, and he's going to help.
And I think I was mute. I was dialed in, but not muted. But you couldn't hear me. So hi, everybody.
Hello, Bill.
Welcome, Bill.
Hello, Bill. Well, that's wonderful to have you here. Do we have any other guests who are not members? Do we have? I saw Renee.
Renee. Yeah.
Renee, are you here?
Yeah.
And
you have to unmute, Renee.
Yes. Hello from West Bloomfield. I'm the president-elect.
Yep. Yes. Well, wonderful. Wonderful. Are you doing virtual meetings?
We are indeed. So I thought I would see how the pros do it today.
Well, you know, it doesn't get any better than this, I got to tell you. So thank you very much. You obviously have a wonderful club, and on this meeting, or in this meeting, Bill Roy is our president-elect, and so you'll get to know Bill more in your year of presidency. Birthdays, I don't believe we have any birthdays this coming week. If I'm mistaken, and anybody has a birthday, let me know. But hearing none, I don't believe that we have any. Well, I mentioned Bill Roy, and thank you, Bill. You're our bulletin editor today, and none other than Charles Wickens will be our speaker for the 2-minute update. And Bob Gibbs, is Bob on this call as of yet? I don't believe that he is, but he was going to be the host to our speaker. If Bob is not available, if there is another volunteer to be speaker host, we can do that, or I can do an intro. I want to mention preliminarily that this is our annual meeting today, according to our bylaws, and so any of you who have not voted yet for our Birmingham Rotary Club Board of Directors, if you could hop off at some point and, or otherwise, get on your email through your phone or otherwise and vote. We'd like to see if we could get the results of our election announced before the conclusion of our meeting. And Chris McLogan, you're here. You'll take those emails. And,
yes.
and so again, if you would please, if you haven't voted, please send an email to Chris and or Richard Chapek, and they will
John,
be able to do this. Yes, sir.
John, okay, yeah, let me just cover everything again. We sort of, we somewhat extended the voting period. So right up through, let's say in the next few minutes, if any of you have not voted, please do so. And I will give you Richard Chapek's direct email in a moment. So get ready to write that down. But if anybody has not voted, you still may do so. Let me again read the candidate names, please. Amanda Anderson, Mark Cooper, John Mucha, Vic Pooler, Andrew Suntharatoki, and George Stern. So if anybody hasn't, and Richard's email is Chapek.
Why don't you put it in chat?
Okay, Richard's email is Chapek, SHAPACK at sgzlaw.com. So do that in the next couple minutes, and Richard will be able to use the tally sheet we've been using and make sure that all votes are counted. And then President John, at some point, if you would just, as we get closer to perhaps introducing our speaker, maybe Richard will be able to come on with the final announcement of our newest board members.
Thank you. We appreciate that very much. All right. I wanted to mention also preliminarily that I don't know if you've all had a chance yet to read the latest edition of the Rotarian magazine, but there is a member of the Detroit Rotary Club that is featured therein. It talks about certain the adversities that he has had to overcome. And so I thought that that would be very interesting to all of you. And it's quite a privilege to have a local member highlighted. All right.
John,
yes, sir.
one more thing. I'm sorry I didn't say. I want to make sure we clarify. Of the 6 candidates, please vote for 3. So 3 of the 6 candidates.
Yes, and I understand you have to vote for at least 3. You have to vote for that number. So, all right. Well, that's important.
John, one more
yes.
quick item.
Yes.
Let's make it that anyone wants to vote, we'll vote in the next 10 minutes so that we're not going through the whole meeting waiting for people to vote.
Yes, in the next 10 minutes. And then would it be acceptable then right after Kevin Dietz concludes his remarks in the Q of A that we'll announce? That should give you sufficient time to tally?
I have the whole tally on a spreadsheet right now. If people send me in votes in the next 10 minutes, I will be available immediately to go ahead and give you the results.
All right.
And I'm putting the names in. I'm putting the names in on chat and Richard's email right now.
Okay, very good. You know, one of the things that we do now, I'll mention this to you, Renee, is we've added it to our agenda on a weekly basis as a question of the week. And this week's question, which we'll come to in a few minutes, but you could start to think about it perhaps, is what was your favorite children's program when you were little? So think about that. In the meantime, Charles Wickens, would you please provide us with a 2-minute update?
A 2-minute update when nothing's
Yes, sir.
going on. Hang on. Okay, I'm unmuted. I was thinking about this. It's been strange times. I'm getting sick and tired of cooking chicken because that's all I cook. So I've been going to the Thai takeout and to various other takeouts, and it's good to see them still stay open. I was very happy that the golf courses opened about 10 days ago, and I have played 8 rounds of golf, some of them only 9 holes. It's tough carrying your bag for 18 holes, and the last round was disgusting, but the one before that I had 4 pars in 9 holes. I noticed that at the beginning of this style, when we were going remote concerts, they were absolutely a bunch of rubbish. But I watched Disney last night, and they've now become pretty slick. They're managing to put these concerts on with quite a lot of aplomb and quite smartly. So that's what I've been doing. I don't watch Saturday Night Live, but I was hoping to show you the Saturday Night Live Jennifer Granholm skit. However, what I am going to do is I'm going to send a link to everybody through chat. If you haven't seen it, it's quite amusing. It's Cecily Strong doing Jennifer Granholm for 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and it was quite amusing. So I don't reckon I'm going to have any auctions this year, but I'm still doing Medicare business remotely from home. If anybody's turning 65 or retiring because of the circumstances, I can help them remotely. Maybe there'll be auctions at the end of the year, but I doubt it. However, I'm staying well, I'm walking every day, and I've learned how to plank. And if you can plank for more than 1 minute, good luck to you. That, ladies and gentlemen, is my 2-minute update, and I'm going to hopefully send you the link to the Jennifer Granholm skit. It's quite funny. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you. And I wanted to recognize some of the faces here that I see that I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you face to face recently, but Mike Williams. Mike, welcome. Nave, always wonderful to see you, Nave Gruhl. I see Vic Pooler, we have you on, our speaker of last week. Interesting events in your organization, Vic, in the past week since you spoke. But Dave Zimmer, good to see you, Dave. Linda Hatfield, of course, Carol, and Amanda. So welcome all of you. It's wonderful to see you. All right.
Don't forget Swanson.
Oh yeah, Bob Swanson. Well, you know, speaking of Bob, and that's a good segue, and I apologize. Bob, you were one of the first ones on. We had a virtual happy hour on May 7th, which was a lot of fun, and we decided every 2 weeks we're going to do a virtual happy hour. Our next virtual happy hour will be May 21st at 5:30 p.m. And we thank you, Brian, for hosting. Brian, are you on right now? I thought I saw Brian on earlier, but
Yeah, hi.
He's muted. Yeah, now he's on mute.
Oh, yeah.
Brian, thanks for hosting that virtual happy hour, and
it's easy.
And tell us a little bit about it, and then if you would decide who was the winner after, and the winner of what, for those who aren't familiar.
Yeah, so we did the virtual happy hour. Everybody was supposed to bring a hat or wear a hat on it, and the best, craziest, most creative hat, I was going to buy the first round of drinks at the next physical happy hour. Marsha Kovacs was the winner. She had a themed hat for Cinco de Mayo, since it was Cinco de Mayo a couple of days before, and she put a lot of research and development into that hat. It was pretty outstanding. Bob Swanson was a close second. He had the Lone Ranger going. It was pretty good. It's pretty good. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I told Bob he was the Lone Ranger. I told him during this COVID, you're supposed to wear the mask over your mouth, not your eyes. I was just but Bob, you looked very, very handsome. So thank you for that. No, it was good to see everyone. So May 21st at 5:30, we'll hit it again. Do you think we'll have another theme?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm working on that one. I'm trying to. If anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. and we'll go from there. I was thinking wildest and craziest hair,
I see.
or
right,
the
well,
worst
fine.
home cut, barber job or something. I don't know. I mean, Andrea keeps offering to trim things up, and I don't know. I've seen her in action with scissors, and I'm definitely afraid. So,
All right. Well,
Yep.
well, good. Well, thank you very much.
all right. Thank you.
Good. Linda Hatfield, do you have anything to relate to us regarding membership? Or if not, we'll.
Well, we're going to have a district. I'm on the membership for District 6380, and we are going to be having a Zoom the middle of this week. So I will let you guys, get updated. I know that the year is almost done, and Brenda will no longer be heading it. It will be Roma from Troy. From the Troy Club will be heading membership. So I will let you know everything that's coming up.
Excellent. Yeah, someone was, Chris, were you trying to get my attention? Okay. I will continue on then with the question of the week. What was your favorite children's program when you were little? Does anyone have any fond memory? And I guess that's pretty broad because you might have had different favorites at different ages, but I'm just curious if anyone had anything that really was important to them back then, and if so, why?
I hate to admit it, but howdy doody.
What was it about howdy doody?
Sort of shows my level of how little it takes to entertain me.
I heard rumors, Dave. that you
It's
were
howdy
watching it.
doody time. It's howdy doody time.
Yeah, he was trying to beat Clarabelle.
I don't know. Anybody else have any fond memories?
So I'll tell you that I used to watch. In fact, we'd come home from school for lunchtime and we'd watch Soupy Sales.
That's exactly my memory.
Yep. And what was interesting is that about a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to sell Soupy Sales' house. It was in Sherwood Forest, which was really kind of fun. In fact, that it used to be Soupy Sales' house.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
That's all right. Do we have another one?
Well, I got to go with Soupy Sales also. As a matter of fact, my mother and father went to school with Soupy back at Mackenzie High, so they knew him, and which was kind of funny. But I remember going to Edgewater Park one day, and they had all these celebrities and everything. And every time that Soupy Sales came out to introduce somebody, everybody would mob Soupy. They didn't care about anybody else but Soupy. So he was the best. I used to even watch him at night too. He had Johnny Carson show at 11 o'clock at night, and I used to stay up and watch him then too. Great guy.
Seriously, Edgewater Park beats us all, just so you know. So everybody that remembers Edgewater Park, remember Edgewater Park?
Yeah.
Seriously dangerous rides that now would have been completely outlawed. So.
Yeah. How about the Wall Lake Casino?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, right.
Oh, yeah.
What do you remember about that, Bob?
What do I remember? Oh, the roller coaster.
Yes. Yeah. Those are good. Those are good times and good memories. Yes.
My dad grew up in Ann Arbor, and he used to talk about going to see Glenn Miller and people like that at the Walled Lake Casino, at the Walled Lake.
Yes.
Well, excellent. Well, good. Well, all right. Well, let's move on. Does our nominating committee have its election results in yet?
The answer is yes. I have not received any more ballots, so I can provide a response based on the ballots that were in. the good news is we did have 35 members vote, okay? And the other part that's interesting is that just how very close the votes are. The 3 new directors, one will be a returning director, namely George Stern, Vic Pooler, and Mark Cooper. We had mind-boggling because the difference in votes between the top and bottom were literally, I mean, 1 vote apart kind of routine. So hats off to Chris and his nominating committee for having done such an outstanding job in terms of bringing the nominees.
Well, thank you, Richard, and yes, congratulations, George, Vic, and Mark. And once again, Chris McLogan, our immediate past president, showed great leadership as he did throughout the past year prior and as our president. And thank you very much, Chris.
My pleasure. Great group of people. Congratulations to all.
All right, my friend. And so now I will move on to our speaker, and Bob Gibbs is not on today, so I'll have the pleasure of introducing our esteemed guest, Mr. Kevin Dietz, who is the president of Dietz Connect. And Kevin, if I may call you Kevin, you're in our homes and in our hearts in many respects. You're one of the country's great storytellers, and we all know you have a very charismatic personality and unique ability to connect with people, which allows you to share your emotional and authentic stories that inspire change. And I'm sure you'll do the same today. We know about some of your background as a lead investigative reporter for WDIV TV in Detroit for more than 2 decades and various other prominent positions. And we did publish your bio on our website, so some of us are familiar with that background. And so we know that you uncovered some significant stories in relation to the Macomb County jail system. I seem to recall that you did so in relation to the fall of our former mayor of the city of Detroit, Kwame Kilpatrick. And then, of course, Richard Wershey Jr., White Boy Rick. And it's interesting what has happened through that whole saga. And so your passion comes from the fact that, as I understand, you're a longtime Detroiter, as many of us are. You were born in the city of Detroit, grew up in Bloomfield Hills. You attended high school at Birmingham Brother Rice. I attended your rival, Detroit Catholic Central.
As did my father.
Did he? Oh, that's wonderful. Yep. And you graduated from Western Michigan, and you have had 26 or more year career as an investigative reporter in Detroit. And as I said earlier, you run your own company today, helping organizing and navigate the media to tell compassionate stories and to make the necessary connections that can truly make a difference. So Kevin, thank you for being here. And we appreciate your taking of your valuable time to spend it with Rotarians. We're interested in what you can share with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really nice to be here with you guys, hang out with you guys, Zoom with you guys. If this is Zoom, I think it is. I hope the moms had a nice Mother's Day. It certainly was a different Mother's Day. It was interesting around here. We Zoomed my mom, and then we Zoomed my wife's mom, and then my wife got to spend time with the kids, and we didn't have to watch church on the internet. And so we weren't running all over town trying to get to a restaurant and a church and 2 different moms' houses. So it ended up being kind of nice. And I say that mostly in that it's good to try and be optimistic about the situation we're in. It's there are always some silver linings to tough situations, and we found that yesterday on Mother's Day a little bit. I do want to talk a little bit about COVID because it's so important. I still talk with so many police and politicians and different people weekly. This COVID has hit everybody different. And I think it's important to remember that we're not all seeing this crisis through the same lens. I had my Aunt Lynn passed away from COVID. She was 83, and she was older and feeble, and she was in an assisted living home. And she might have died had she caught the flu. But the fact that it was COVID, it was really sad. Her husband was able to go in, but in a full protective suit. Only her oldest child could go in. The other kids weren't able to go in. She wanted last rites, and so they brought a computer in, much like this, and did a Zoom last rites. And her other children had to Zoom in to say goodbye to their mom. They weren't able to go in because the hospital or the hospital just wouldn't allow it. And so you just think about that. None of us really know the experience the other person is having as you go through this crisis, and some are really hit really hard by it, and others not so much. There's the other side of it, the financial side of it. We were fortunate. We were fortunate here that I didn't lose any work through the crisis, and my wife didn't lose any either. But our neighbors just across the street, both of them were laid off, and it's scary. And I know there's some financial help out there for people, but it's very scary. And so I say all of this in that if you're struggling through this crisis in one way or another, I think it's important that you speak out and let people know, that you kind of raise your hand and say, I could use a virtual hug, or or I could use assistance. I could use some help having someone to go to the grocery store for me and pick up my groceries, and vice versa. If you're doing okay and you're feeling okay, I think it's good to do as much as you can to try and help other people during this crisis. And it's going to be going on for quite some time. And it's not hard to help people during the COVID crisis. I mean, one thing you can do is just not catch it, wash your hands and follow the rules and do the social distancing so that the hospitals aren't full, so that there are enough doctors and nurses to take care of the people who are sick. I think that's important. And I think one of the big problems out there is isolation. And you guys talked about having your Zoom happy hour. I think that's fantastic. We've been trying to do that with friends too. Our kids have been trying to do that. My wife's been trying to do that with her friends, and I've been trying to do that with mine. Just by reaching out and saying hello, or even a text that says, I'm thinking about you. I think that can go a long way. One thing that people have asked me to tell people about is to watch out for alcohol use. It's up 55% this year over last year. And it's not like the toilet paper situation where everyone's hoarding it in their basements. The people who are buying alcohol are drinking it, and the police have seen a massive spike in domestic violence cases. And they attribute some of that to the increased use of alcohol. So again, it's just something to watch out for and to talk about if it's something you're seeing. The doctors I talked to say not to worry about the weight gain. All this extra weight doesn't give us the best Zoom profile perhaps, but they say that gaining 10, 15 pounds is not going to hurt you nearly as much as going to the store every other day to try and get fresh fruit and vegetables. That it's better to put on a couple pounds than to make the extra trips to the grocery store. So that's the COVID situation. I saw a survey, a national survey that was done by the media. They were trying to find out what the number one related word was or feeling to the COVID crisis, and it wasn't even close. The number one word associated with COVID-19 was boredom. Everybody is absolutely bored. So I'm going to try over the next few minutes to maybe entertain you a little bit with some stories from 26 or actually 30 years in the media. And I'm happy to answer questions about anything I talk about, any of these stories, if there's specific things that you like. But just so you know who I am, I'm a dad and a husband, and I've been a journalist for 30 years, all in Michigan, but I've covered stories all around the world. Some of the more notable stories that I've covered, and you may have questions afterwards, I was on the front lines of Operation Desert Storm in the weeks leading up to the conflict. I had the ability or good fortune to fly with the Blue Angels in Michigan, and we were flying Mach 2 upside down I-94, which was an incredible experience that few people get to experience. You mentioned Kwame Kilpatrick. I think I spent 10 years of my life following from the Manoogian Mansion Party, or supposed Manoogian Mansion Party, to his rise and ultimate being sentenced to 28 years in federal prison for conspiracy and fraud. We searched for Jimmy Hoffa at least 4 times on my watch. The FBI getting tips and heading out to various places with shovels and cranes, looking for the former Teamster boss, to no avail. Jimmy would be over 100 years old right now, but people still want to find out what happened to him. I was right here covering Dr. Kevorkian through the assisted suicides. I remember the first Saturday I was working at Channel 4, I got a call to go to Belle Isle, and his van was there with one of his patients or victims in the back of the van. And it was quite a welcome to Detroit, where the news never stops. But it was certainly interesting and wild following Dr. Kevorkian's story. We all know what 9/11 was like. It was incredibly crazy time in the media. I raced from my daughter's nursery school over to Metro Airport to jump on a plane to go to New York. But in the half hour it took me to get there, all planes, there were no more people boarding planes. They were trying to get thousands of planes out of the skies. And that changed our country for quite a while, much as COVID will. I've unfortunately not been able to solve the Oakland County child killer case. I've spent literally 25 years trying to figure that thing out. I've become friends with all the families. I was Timmy King's age. I was the same age as Timmy when he disappeared. So I lived through it as a kid, and the fears, and then later came back and tried to help solve that thing. I was one of the first reporters to the Cobo Hall when Nancy Kerrigan got whacked in the knee. And we're thinking, what in the world is wrong with Detroit that they're whacking a ice skater? And who would have guessed that it would have linked back to rival Tanya Harding? And what a national story that was. And then there were some other just things that I went to briefly, but touched me. Went down to Hurricane Andrew in Florida, and we were going house by house. We were there to cover the story, but we ended up taking bottled water and handing water and food through because families were trapped in their homes. The homes had caved in on them, and the rescue crews couldn't get there fast enough. So they were looking for anyone who could get to these houses to just provide water and food so that people who were trapped could survive until they could be saved. And the election, I mean, you guys follow politics, but in 2000, who can forget the hanging Chads and the pregnant Chads and the tied election between Gore and Bush? I got on a plane. I thought I was going down for the weekend to cover how close the election was going to be, and I didn't come back until after Christmas, 35 days later, and they still hadn't figured out who the president was going to be. But we learned a civics lesson in how the courts worked and how you moved from the local courts to the state court, ultimately to the state Supreme Court, who decided in Florida that Bush had won, and ultimately that led to him winning the election. So other things, there's just a memorable story at the morgue in Wayne County, where I had just by chance found out that they were overflowing with bodies at the morgue in the freezer, and they didn't know what to do. And I couldn't understand it. So I went in to try and understand it. It's 200 bodies at the morgue. And it turns out that people who don't have money don't go to collect the bodies because they don't want to pay for the funerals. And we found that 8 war veterans were there. And I went, I have some friends in the funeral business, and they called some friends, and they ended up working out a way where they could pay for and bury with dignity all 200 people who were at the morgue, and they created a situation that where that problem no longer exists, although it has sprung up again because of the COVID temporarily. So those are some of the big stories I did and some of the big cases I did. But they're not necessarily the ones that mean the most to me. The stories I mentioned won awards and got me some raises and got me lots of viewers. But the stories that I really remember most were the ones that just where I was able to help somebody who was really jammed up, someone who couldn't help themselves or didn't know how to fight back. You mentioned White Boy Rick. That's one of the stories that means a lot to me because of that, because here was a kid who went to prison when he was 17 and he was guilty. He's not one of those people who said I was innocent or I was wrongly convicted, I was innocent. He said, I did it. I was dealing drugs. I did this. And they sentenced him to life in prison as a 17-year-old. And even when Michigan found it unconstitutional to lock someone up for life, they would not let him out. And they held him for over 30 years. I found out, I got on his case after he was in for about 25 years. And for the next 4 years, I did over 300 stories on his situation, trying to dig into why he was the longest serving nonviolent criminal in the history of Michigan prisons. And ultimately, through repeated stories, we got them to finally parole him, and he'll be released from prison on July the 20th, which will be 3 days after his 52nd birthday. So I went in as a 17-year-old kid, and he's going to get out at 52. But that was someone who was stuck in a system that just wasn't working, and he couldn't figure out why. And it turned out that there's some people who didn't like him and didn't want him out, and they kind of swore that he'd never get out. And until there was some pressure of the media focused on him, he just wasn't going to be able to get out. But anyway, he is getting out now, and that's good. There was a story called Dr. P that we did. We had heard about young girls in Detroit lining up at an abandoned building. It wasn't for drugs. It wasn't for prostitution. These young women were going for abortions. They had found out that there was a doctor who had a gambling problem, and he would do it for cheap. And the biggest problem was that he was using old equipment. He didn't have a nurse that was there in case something went wrong. He wasn't following any of the health standards. So all of these young women were at serious risk. And the police were called, and the state was called, but he kept moving from abandoned building to abandoned building. And by the time they got an investigation together, they couldn't figure out he was gone. And so we went undercover and we figured this thing out, and we were able to help police bust this back alley abortion clinic. And he was ultimately arrested and deported. And that hopefully made a difference in the community, because that's the things I try and do. A man named Floyd Dent was pulled over in Inkster, an African-American man, by a white police officer. And he called me up, and he said he was going to go to jail for at least 5 years for possession of cocaine and assaulting a police officer. And he said, I did not do it. And this man, he worked at Ford for 30 years. I knew, just from talking to him, I knew he didn't do it. And we dug around and dug around. It turned out we were able to find the police car videos. And lo and behold, it was the white police officer who beat up the African-American man. And we even had a little snippet of evidence, although it wasn't proof, but it showed he may have planted cocaine in that car. And instead of Floyd Dent going to prison for 5 years, the police officer was fired, and he went to prison for a year. And had that not worked out, innocent man would have been in prison, which is sickening, and a police officer who was bad would have still been out there doing this kind of thing over and over again. So when I think of stories, those are the kinds of things I think about, trying to help somebody. And I'll finish with one story that it was just the oddest story probably of my whole career, but I got a letter from a man. He was getting ready to be executed in Atlanta, Georgia. They call their electric chair their old Sparky. And he was from Battle Creek, Michigan, and he was scheduled to die. And he said, Kevin, my family's disowned me. He had killed 3 people and nearly killed a fourth people. He owed the money. He was a gambler, and he went in, he did it. He confessed once he was caught, and he was facing the chair. And he said, nobody will come down and witness my execution. The way it works is the state has 10 witnesses, the victim's family has 10 witnesses, the media through a lottery system has 10 witnesses, and there's thousands and thousands of media people who apply for those. And then the family has 10 witnesses. So he invited me to go down as his witness, and I said, I don't know you. I don't even have any real interest in the story here. I don't know what I can do for you, you know, because he was in Atlanta, Georgia. The murders were in Atlanta, Georgia. But anyway, ultimately I went down, and this man, he had found God, and he was sorry, and he wanted his family to know that he loved them, and he wanted the victim's family to know that he was sorry. And he did. He died. He was electrocuted. But it was just one of those things where I got a letter from somebody who had nowhere to turn, and so I went. You know, and that's kind of my point. Is I feel like I had a really, really successful career, and it's not because you know, I won some big award for covering Kwame Kilpatrick's case, which I did, or some other case, which I won an award. The stories in, whether it's TV or in any business, I think anytime that you're able to help somebody, help someone who can't help themselves, I think it pays off incredibly tenfold. And I think in all of those cases, it helped me more than it helped the person that I was trying to help. So I'm open to any questions anybody has. I've seen a lot of stuff. I have a lot of stories, but we said we'd keep it to 15 minutes, and I'm probably over that already. So thank you for having me.
Well, thank you very much, Kevin. All right, if there are any questions, why don't you unmute and speak directly to Kevin.
Hi, Kevin. It's Wendy.
Hi, Wendy. How are you?
Good. Waldo's or Norwood Tavern?
Oh, yeah. Awesome. That's my spot. My daughter's at Kalamazoo College now, so when I go up to watch her basketball games, I make her go to Waldo's, and she can't believe that anyone would go there. But I told her it felt like home there.
All right. Next question, George.
Kevin, how did somebody today learn how to be a journalist?
Well, it's interesting because I asked that question when I was going into it. I asked a guy named Bill Bonds, who probably you guys may remember, but I was doing an internship. I said, well, what should I be doing? And Drinking. He said, well, he said, you don't need to go into communications. You need to learn about as many things as you can, because your stories will take you into all various fields. So learn about as many things as you can and read as much as you can. I ended up becoming a political science major with an economics background, undergrad or minor, so that I had some knowledge in different areas. To this day, I love covering politics because of my education in political science. But I would tell people to read as much as they can and from many different sources. Don't just flip on Fox News or MSNBC and take it all in one area. You want everybody's view so that you can try and find the truth, because that's what it's all about.
All right. Next question. Anyone? Am I missing anyone?
Hey, Kevin, Dave Zimmer. Do you have a best guess on what you think happened to Jimmy Hoffa?
Yeah, I've talked to so many people about this. I've covered this so much, and I've read it, and I do get tricked sometimes when someone has new information or new evidence. I fall into it, and I think, oh yeah, this is what happened. But I mean, I do believe that I believed he was picked up that day at Macus Red Fox. I believe he was killed almost instantly. I believe I think it was a mafia-related killing, and I believe that his body was ultimately put in some sort of acid or something that completely eliminated that. I don't think he was buried somewhere and then moved or anything like that. I think maybe incinerated immediately. There's definitely a lot of connections between the mafia and different incinerators. But I think they took care of that immediately, or I mean, the FBI literally, it's their biggest embarrassment. They've done everything they can to try and solve this thing. I just think they would have solved it if it was possible.
What about that? What about that book, by the book where they have Sheehan killing him and all that? I Paint Houses or something like that. That one, I read it. Sounded so reasonable.
Yeah, I did too, and it does sound reasonable, but it didn't match up with the DNA testing. They took blood out of that house, and his blood wasn't there. It just the science wasn't there.
All right, another question.
Hey, Kevin, there's recently been a couple of conviction integrity units kind of established in Michigan, both in Detroit and Greater Michigan now. Sounds like you sort of would have a connection to that area through your work. What are your thoughts?
Man, they can't do enough of that work right now. The science is there to solve to free innocent people. There's nothing worse than someone innocent being locked up. It's just, I mean, it's horrifying to think that happens, and it does happen. I have a feeling, and I think there, especially in the 80s, there was crack cocaine was a huge problem. Murders went from 250 to 900 in this city. I think there was a call to do something about it, the violence, and to stop it. And I think people were getting arrested and locked up because they were in a gang, because they were this, because they were that. But the evidence didn't necessarily match the crimes that people were convicted for. And I mean, we're just seeing over and over and over again people who were locked up, and they're, look, I cover these cases, and you go in and you sit there and you put a police officer on the stand and they say, this is what happened. I believe the police officer every time. And it's just unfortunate, but not all police officers are good. I applaud Kim Worthy for having the integrity unit and to working as hard as they are. I think they could do more, and I think they could do more about people who convicted these people. I don't think that they should just get a free pass on that side of things. As a journalist, there's nothing more rewarding to me than freeing somebody who's wrongfully convicted. I hope they continue down that road.
Hey, Kevin.
Thanks a lot.
The situation in Georgia most recently, how do you do an analysis about the challenges that presented with a person being basically killed in February and takes 2.5 months to even address it? What is your spin on that in terms of where did we make an error when that tape was available at that time?
Yeah, I don't think there's a way to defend that. It's unexplainable, really. I feel like you can say that, COVID did this and COVID did that, but look, even if you weren't going to make arrests, because I know FBI agents aren't as active in their investigations right now because of COVID-19. I know local police are responding to domestic violence calls more than they're investigating crimes that they know about. But look, there's nobody that, if they had that tape and they saw that tape, they know there was a problem, and you're never gonna get ahead by hiding it, by burying it. It's gonna come out. You're not gonna make it go away entirely. I think it was an error in judgment, and probably someone just said, well, either someone said, look, we got bigger problems with COVID, or somebody was sinister and wanted to hide it. Neither one of those are acceptable to me. I mean, from what I'm seeing so far.
Other questions? All right. Well, Kevin, thank you very much once again. We enjoyed all those stories. And like you say, we could spend the day with you and hear more and more about what you know and what you've experienced. Maybe at some future point in time, we could have you back and we could talk about it. You seem to have a similar philosophy in life that many of us do in our organization, Rotary, where our motto is service above self. And I take note of your new company, Dietz Connect, and our theme of our Rotary year this year is Connect the World. So many similarities. And so, I mean, at some point, you may want to explore our organization, and we'd love to have somebody of your esteem be a member of our group. So thank you once again. You're a good man.
It was a lot of fun, and you owe me a lunch, right? Because you're supposed to get a lunch if you talk.
That's
I saw
right.
that. I read that somewhere.
That's right. And you pick the restaurant that you want this week.
You might get Brian to buy you a free drink too.
That's right. So we're going to conclude shortly, but I know that on the call we have some Rotarians that haven't had a chance to say anything yet, and if they would like to say anything, we of course wish the best. Amanda Anderson, Carol Peterson, John Mucha, Molly Swart, Doug Kosh, and Chuck Moss, and we've and recognized Nave as well. So anything new or additional anyone wants to raise or bring before we conclude?
Hello, John Hatcher with the Auburn Hills Rotary Club. I've enjoyed our meeting today. Excellent. Excellent speaker as well.
Thank you. And your name again is?
Sharna Hatcher.
Oh, okay. That's a pretty name, Sharna.
Really enjoyed the meeting today.
Well,
and we're, it was interesting that I logged in on a day that you voted for your board members, and congratulations to the new board members, because our club will be holding its election online as well. And so I took some notes about the way in which you did yours. And I just want to say hello to Charles and to Joe and Nave. I thank you so much for sending the invite out. Look forward to joining you another time.
Thank you, Sharna.
Thank you. We want to see your face, Sharna.
Yeah.
Hey, John.
Very nice.
I think we're looking at Nave's right now. I like seeing Dave's face.
Hello, David.
Yep.
Hi, Dave.
Hello, John. This is Dave Zimmer. Kevin, thanks for your presentation. It was really great for you to do it, and thanks for all the wonderful work you do. I just would like to let everyone know we're planning to start driving back to Michigan on Friday, and hopefully we'll get there by next Monday, and that's where we are, finally going to get out of Arizona.
All right, Dave. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate that. And
John?
Yes.
I would just like to ask that if anyone has some recommendations for speakers, we still don't know when we're going to be back at the community house. I've got a few dates in June to fill yet. So if you have any suggestions, if you could please email me their contact information, I'd love to start seeing how we can get them on the schedule. There's my email address, and that would be appreciated.
Yes. Okay. Well, wonderful. Yes. Everyone is invited to make recommendations as to speakers. Wendy, you've done an excellent job bringing in high caliber speakers, such as Kevin Dietz here today and the others recently. So thank you. Thank you very much. All right. So anyone else have anything that they want to express before we conclude, and we'll move on then. All right. So we're going to again, thank you to Chris McLogan, Richard Chapek, and congratulations to George Stern, Vic Cooler, and Mark Cooper, our new board members. Bill Roy, if the rest of us mute, will you give us a smile.
Oh, well, there's Carol. She's giving us a big smile right now. So thanks, Carol. All right, everybody. Smile and the world smiles with you. Sing a song. Don't be weary, just be cheery all day long. Whenever your trials, your troubles, and your cares seem to be more than you can really bear, smile and the world smiles with you. Sing a song. Hey!
Thank you, Bill. You're a good man. You're gonna be a great leader, and we're moving closer to your term all the time. Our next virtual meeting will be next Monday, May 18th at noon. In the meantime, everyone stay safe, stay healthy, and if you need any help individually for any reason, contact me as president, and I'll help you. We'll get you the help you need, whatever that may be. All right. God bless everyone.
John,
Yes.
quick item.
Thanks, John.
Okay, I'm out of town at this point as well, coming back on Friday. But in the meantime, we should have somebody or somebody's checking on Bob Kenning.
Yes.
I spoke with Bob Kenning. Okay, I can tell you. He said that he's taking a nap because I wanted to try and help get him set up on Zoom, and I think his son Jim could do that, but he bowed out. But he's he's very honest with you, and I said, well, how are you doing? He said, well, really not very well, and he was in a lot of pain with his back, and he had just taken Advil or something for it, but. Yeah, another guy that's keeping track of him is Jay Reynolds from the Senior Men's Club. So a couple people that and he's of course got family in the area. So I can tell you that much.
All right. That raises a point that I'll conclude with, that I've had some communication with Joe Valentine, the Birmingham city manager, and Joe's not on this call, I don't believe. As to what is going to happen in relation to the Memorial Day ceremony that we Rotarians typically participate in, and we have a wreath. My understanding is that is going to be done virtually this year. And in my communications with Joe, I inquired as to whether or not we could have a member or members participate. It may be that we could have only one Rotarian participate. And so I wanted to get some input and direction as to Bob Kenning in that respect. And he may not be well enough to be that designated representative. Dave Zimmer, if you're still on the call, I know that you have always been very involved with that activity. As well. And so I would welcome comments from all of you if you have some suggestions as to who that Rotarian should be. It may be me, but it may be someone else that is more connected, if you will, so to speak. So those are some things that I just wanted to throw out there. So thank you for raising that question about Bob Kenning. And David, thank you for your input on Bob. And if you could let us know on a periodic basis how he's doing, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you. All right, everyone. As I said, God bless. We'll be in touch, and stay safe and well. All right. See you next week. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, all of our guests.
Thank you, everybody. Good job.
We appreciate it.
Good
all
job.
Right. Take care.
Yeah. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Bill.
Bye, Dave.